Okay, it's pretty exciting. Now we get to see how we did with these 4 prototypes. To do that, I'm going to bring the camera down and focus right in on the ice cream so you can really see the action. All right, I'm just going to take these in turn and make some observations as I try it out. So first I'd say this is not terribly hard ice cream. It's kind of medium hardness. I'm going to start with the push and twist, the punch and twist concept. And our idea was that you would push down and then you would twist. And then one thing I noticed is I don't know where the back side of the scoop is, so that's something I'd want to be able to figure out. And quickly I realized that the plug doesn't, it cuts pretty well, but the ice cream kind of breaks into pieces here. And now I realize I don't have any way to release this ice cream, and that's clearly going to be an issue here. So in fact, I got to go off and get a tool or something to release the ice cream. Actually, I think I'm just going to let it sit here because that's going to be clearly going to be a problem. So the punch works pretty well, and it removes the right chunk. It doesn't release very well. Okay, the next scoop is the ball cutter, the one that spins and cuts the ball. So the idea was thread it in, twist it, and pull out. And one of the things you notice is the ice cream tears, and so it's instead of cutting, it appears that it's not terrible, but the ice cream tends to fracture in the cavity. Okay, so that's 2. All right, the idea here was that we would we'd push this down, and then we'd press here, and that in some ways was the nicest of the options. Let me just do that again. Actually, I like that quite a lot. Forms a fairly nice ball, and that ergonomic pushing action is pretty nice, actually. All right. And then let me try the pull. So I've kind of made a mess of my ice cream, but let me just see what that's like. Actually, I kind of like the pulling action. You definitely need a twist at the end. Let me bring this around. That's pretty nice, actually. You kind of do a pull and scrape to form the all right. So of the 4 we tested, this clearly has some problems with the ice cream removal. This one it didn't do a nice cutting it. Although maybe if you do it if you go around a few times, it's still fracturing. This was fairly promising. I think that could be refined to work. And I also think there's something about this that's pretty interesting. Now, as I was reflecting on the fact that I'd done this one wrong, I wondered whether, in fact, it made sense just to angle that somewhat to give better ergonomics so that maybe it doesn't need to pivot at all, but rather if you oriented it at 45 degrees, you could get both kind of a wrist action and kind of a pulling action. Now it would be, I think it would only work, yeah, it'd be handed, so it'd only work with righties, with right-handed people, but this is pretty nice ergonomically, actually. And that just illustrates the role of serendipity again in exploration. In fact, we're in the prototyping phase, and I make this mistake here effectively in terms of the way I cut the bevel, and I discovered that I kind of like the resulting concept, and it ends up being possibly one of the better options here. So I'm going to try the pull again. The pull is pretty nice, and you know, this though, the interesting question would be whether we could get the scoop to give effectively the benefit of the pull, but without having to actually actively pivot, which seems like it would be nice if it were just a fixed point. And then let me just try this a little bit too. I also like this. I think this is pretty promising. Because even if you don't use the full pivot, it will work to remove a scoop. All right, so based on that exploration, I'm pretty encouraged by some combination of this and this, and some version of this.